I'm Joshua Adams, and this is the Industry Insights Podcast, where I am joined in the Rock Paper Simple studio by community leaders as we dive into industry topics and perspectives. Thank you for joining us today. I have Kathryn Rudloff, Executive Director of weVENTURE, Women's Business Center at the Florida Tech College of Business. Kathryn, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So before we dive into it, can you tell us a little bit about weVENTURE, what you guys do over there, and really your role there?
Sure, absolutely. So weVENTURE Women's Business Center is a program of the BISC College of Business at Florida Tech. We're actually an SBA resource partner. So the university gets a grant from the U.S. Small Business Administration to host a Women's Business Center program as a community engagement and outreach effort. So we partner with the U.S. Small Business Administration. There's actually 150 WBCs all around the country, from Puerto Rico to Alaska. We're in every state, but we're all independently run. We are affiliated with a National Association of Women's Business Centers. But at the core of what we do is provide low and no cost business education and training to entrepreneurs. We serve all of the Space and Treasure Coast from Brevard all the way down to Martin County. And we work with, this last year, we just finished our program year, ends at the end of September. We run on the federal fiscal year, 819 unique small businesses in 1 year.
Wow.
And we do free business coaching. Our coaching is always free. And then we do, last year it was 79 training seminars on various biz ed topics. We run a lot of small group facilitation, whether it's a cohort style class for our Pathways Business Launch or CEO peer groups where women can come together and get kind of that strategic support facilitated by a coach, of course, but from other women in business. And then, as you know, we have our Ignite 360 business mentoring program where we really create a custom plan to help businesses who are navigating change or preparing for growth. We work with them for 3 or 6 months on a solid plan to achieve measurable outcomes. And that's where we see the biggest success from a lot of our clients.
Yeah. And that last program, very powerful. I know because I went through it, not once, not twice, but 3 times I went through the program. Needed a lot of help. But no, it totally different stages of my business. And it was one thing that was really, really powerful for me. And I know that Women's Business Center, it sounds like, okay, can I go there? Can I get help? And it's absolutely, I was very welcome there. I went through that program. You guys assigned mentors to the program, assigned objectives. When I first went through, it was my second year in business. I had no idea what I was doing. I had shiny object syndrome, new ideas and new directions, and very hard to focus. And it helped focus me in and say, okay, what are we doing? And then the next time was, okay, we're starting to scale. I need to figure out how I establish a leadership team. And they helped me with that. And then the next time I was like, okay, I need to kind of grow up a little bit. We're second stage now. How do we start to go even further and build systems and processes? And each time I went through the program, it was so helpful. I constantly send people your way. So kudos to what you guys have there.
Thank you. And you're one of our favorite success stories because we are, even though we have Women's Business Center, in our title, because we're federally funded, we certainly don't discriminate based on race or gender. And 20 to 30% of our clients in any given year are male-owned firms, or they might be husband-wife partnerships. So we love working with businesses. And yours is a great example of why the Ignite program is so effective for our clients because it's very individually catered to where you at. We determine first what your business objectives are, and we put together the right team of mentors to help you achieve that and provide the accountability that people who are very creative or very passionate need to actually meet those objectives in a manageable amount of time so that your business can get on with it. It's the hard work, right? I know they gave you homework.
Oh, yes.
We're going to make you do homework. But when we
yes.
provide that accountability and the support to help you get there, then your business can turn on and grow. And like you said, unlock what potential you have.
Yeah. My favorite homework they gave me was they wanted my P&L, and my P&L scared me. So I just didn't use it. And I was second year in business, and I ran everything out of my head. All the finances were out of my head, payrolls out of my head. Literally, I'd go to the end of the month and go, yep, we have enough money.
That sounds like a really good plan.
Was literally how I ran it, and I'd come in, they say, how are the finances? Great.
Yeah.
How's cash flow? Great. They're like, well, what are the numbers? I'm like, oh. And I'm like doing this, and they're like, wait. No. Pull up your P&L. I'm like, I don't use that. And
do you now?
Oh my goodness, I love it. I'm a nerd
Do you
about
live
it
and
now.
die by it?
I live and die by it. I have a budget that runs not just for this year. I typically am running 18 months. I have a cash flow sheet that runs for the whole year. I know exactly how long we could run. I know our burn rate. I know all of that, right? And at this point, we're actually doing open book. And so I teach our P&L to the team,
That's
right?
great.
And so it's just a funny fast forward, if you will.
It is.
I kept putting it off. And finally the group said, if you don't bring your P&L to the next meeting, we're kicking you out. Yeah. Like you're done. You're not allowed to come.
The reality is what's hard is what you don't want to do. And when you're creative like yourself or many other businesses that we work with, they're good at what they do. And running that business side of it is not fun. It is a little bit harder. It takes some knowledge. You don't have an MBA where, you were beaten to death with how to do those things. So we're here to help make sure that very successful entrepreneurs get the business education they need so they can be very successful business managers. And when you have someone who's willing to learn and willing to say, okay, I understand this has to be done for me to grow my business and to take care of my people and to, have the impact that I know it can have, then we can just unlock their potential because there's no hiding from the numbers. There is no hiding from the numbers.
And the fun thing is, and I've told you this before, I have gone on to teach other agencies how to run their numbers. I've created spreadsheet templates for them, sent it over. And so it's been a lot of fun to kind of have these conversations. And these are agencies that are much bigger and much, frankly, a lot more experienced than I have, that I look at and go, okay, I have to learn from them. And it's very cool to say I was able to help them. Yeah. And frankly, I could track that all the way back to learning from weVENTURE. So,
and during the pandemic, we really saw the difference between businesses who were prepared to manage and then those who had just been getting by and the business had been good enough that they were getting by. And unfortunately, a lot of the business closures, that did happen were people who weren't understanding how to manage their cash flow, how to have that predictable strategic approach to how they were managing it. And we have seen a resurgence now that Florida's booming, very much so, of getting back to the fundamentals now. Don't assume just because business is growing great that one, this will last forever, and two, that you won't, suffer some sort of supply chain shock or labor force change or whatever it might be. You've really got to know how to manage your business so that you can be prepared to navigate the unexpected.
Agreed. So let's take a little bit of a pivot. Okay. I know you have some topics you're very passionate about. What is your current passion? What are you talking about? What are you sharing about? What are you championing right now?
Right now, I am very excited. So because we're in Florida Tech College of Business, I've had the opportunity to go back to school myself, and I'm working on my doctorate in business administration.
Awesome.
And I'm in the research phase of what the process is, and presenting some of my initial findings and talking about what my research is at a few conferences coming up. So since you asked,
what have I done?
What have you done? Let's talk for 4 hours.
Here we go.
I'm really passionate. I'm focused on, I noticed during the pandemic, that's when I joined weVENTURE, was right before the pandemic started. I came on in January of 2020. That when all of the data was coming out about how we called it a she-cession, women were leaving the workforce. We were talking about changes in, the work from home situation, what, that was doing to everyone. What I kept coming back to was noticing that women were booming in entrepreneurship. And for the 5 years leading up to the pandemic, and then it's even accelerated since the pandemic, new business starts by women are outpacing men at almost double the rate in Florida. We're starting, almost double the rate of new businesses. And while Florida's leading the country, that trend is the same all over. However, when we dove deeper into the data, and this is other researchers, not me, they found that a lot of these new businesses really are solopreneurs, self-employed, contract workers, whatever you want to call it, between independent contractors or consulting, moving into the consulting space. Women are leaving the traditional labor force and becoming self-employed solopreneurs more than ever before. So at my research, I'm really tying into family policies and what is going on at the state level that is impacting the, little micro environments at all of the states and how women participate in the labor force. And it's pretty interesting so far because there is a pretty clear correlation that states that have more family supportive policies, whether it's investment in childcare, whether it's economic benefits and taxable transfers and stuff to support families and let you keep more of the money that you earn, or whether it's actual policies like paid family leave, paid sick leave, flexible scheduling protections, things like that. States that have more family supportive policies are showing that they have a little bit higher female labor force participation and a little bit lower rates of female self-employment and solopreneurship.
That's a lot of information. That's a lot of information. So where does that information go, right? So you threw a lot at me there, right? All these things we're noticing, the trends here, more women starting businesses, but a lot of them being these solopreneurs, et cetera. What do you do with that data, right? Obviously, it sounds like you're tying this to your research here.
But the so what of why I think this matters is because we see it playing out in real time in our economy. And I don't think a lot of other people are putting the pieces together yet. But women have never been as large of a percent of the labor force as what we are right now. We really did peak just before the pandemic. And even though we fell compared to our male counterparts, we're inching back up there and we're actually seeing the male labor force participation rate fall off. Our economy needs women in the workforce. Workplaces are going to have to think about what does their workforce look like. And the reality is that it's not just women, but it's men too, are saying that we want to reduce that conflict between our home life and the workforce. And so what can we do to rethink the workspace and how we work and how we engage our employees so that people can do both? Because it's just the reality. Women are a larger percent of the workforce and they're kind of flexing their muscle right now, I think.
So how does all of that tie to, you talked about reducing the conflict between home life and work, right? So we're going somewhere with that, right? And so we often call that work-life balance. I know you have a different term for it.
I don't like work-life balance.
So I'm teeing you up. So go ahead and tell me, what is your word for this? And why is it different? Why do you have a different opinion on that?
Sure. So I don't like the phrase work-life balance because balance implies equal weight. And the reality is that some days your job is going to demand a lot more of you. And then there's reality that some days your family is going to demand a lot more of you. So I much prefer the term equilibrium, which in scientific terms means that there are competing forces and priorities, but that they're happening within a balanced environment. And so that it is about reducing the conflict while changing priorities. And I think that when we look at what self-employment and entrepreneurship offers a lot of women and men is that control over their schedule, the control of their financial opportunities that allows them to feel like I can minimize the conflict between my work responsibilities and my home life, or I can have more control over it and minimize that. So I speak to women all the time about let's get rid of this notion that there's equal weight, because it's not. And as a mom, I will just say that, you'll never get rid of the mom guilt that, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. But when you take on an equilibrium mindset, I can really look at my kids and I can say, tonight, I will not be home. I'm not going to see you to put you to bed tonight. I've got a meeting or whatever it is, and I'm sorry. But on Friday, it's family movie night and you've got me, and mom doesn't work on Saturday, and we're going to do this and that. And helping teach my kids about how, yes, you are going to be my priority A, B, and C time. And then sometimes mom's job does take a little bit of a priority and I might not be here. But then they understand that, okay, we give, we take, and we minimize the conflict between the two.
I think it sounds like there's a level of time management here, right? And deciding how to prioritize, how to shift gears, how to say, okay, I'm going 110% today, but I know that I need to shift gears and go 110% family tomorrow, right? And it's figuring that out. I think there's that element. So what do you think that way of thinking, what does that practically look like, right? Both for the employer as well as the employee.
So I think I'll correct you again on banning another word that I say. There's no 110%. You can't give more than 100% of yourself. You just can't. And we lead to burnout, and we lead to this false sense that a 60 or 80-hour work week is somehow healthy or sustainable, because it's not. It's just not. And so when I have done this session with women, I literally have them draw a chart, and there's only 100%. And you can draw what your day looks like, a bar chart, using 3 different colors for work, home, community. But in any given day, you can't go above 100%. So you can see how some days work is going to get more and that's going to get more. So I think realistically, first, it's employers recognizing that you really can't squeeze more out of employees. It's very hard. You will lose them eventually. And in a tight labor market like this, you can't afford to lose good employees. There's a trust factor. Can I trust you that if I give you some flexibility in your schedule, that we can trust that you will get the work that needs to be done at still the quality that we need it to get done with? And from an employee standpoint, there is a respect and a mutual trust that happens then back where you can say, I feel bought into this because I do have that maybe looser leash that I can manage my time and my resources a little bit more, to the benefit of us both. And not every job can do that. There are some jobs where, you've got to be in a position or you're doing the thing, and you've got to have that. But it is great that we're seeing more and more employers and service providers even think outside of the box to say, hey, we need to be able to accommodate people outside of traditional 9 to 5, that boundary has been blurred now. And I don't think if we're ever going back. So the work week's changing, how we engage our workforce, work from home, all of it's changing. We're in a rapid change of how technology is changing how we interact together. And it's a great time for employers to be engaging their employees and coming out the other end and saying, how can I help you be successful? And how will that ultimately still help the business be successful?
And I think figuring out how do you create something that's sustainable was really what we're talking about, that both in the needs of different families, different types of workforces, different businesses and industries. And there's this idea, you have to kind of figure out how that plays together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So sustainable business growth is the ideal. Nobody wants to be in a business where you're growing so rapidly and so quickly, but you can't breathe, like you will eventually burn out. And then you have where, okay, if I'm going at the pace that's too slow, you're never going to get that traction to really grow. And maybe then you continue to have the burden on you because of the opposite, because you can't get that revenue up to where you can hire the other people. So sustainable, manageable business growth from a management perspective, from a workforce perspective, I think is what really everyone's after right now and finding that sweet spot.
It's especially difficult in our industry, right? Our space is known for the long hours, the 60, 80-hour weeks, right? We're known for that industry, marketing is. And it's something we've tried to challenge. How do we be more realistic with that? How do we approach it in a way where we can say, hey, we can have that equilibrium. I've been corrected twice now, so I got to make sure I say it right. But how do we have that, right? How do we protect that? Not just, how do we protect that for our team, right? And because we want our team to stay, we want our team to be bought in, we want our team to have a sustainable workplace, if that makes sense. And when you push people and push people and push people, eventually you can't push them anymore, right? Like you said, there is no 110%, right? There's no such thing. And we say that because at some point, you're going to burn out, right? Having been somebody who has burnt out multiple times because I pushed too hard and put too many hours in and put too much on myself, we have to figure out how to create that sustainability. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on. And I think there isn't an answer yet. I think we're still figuring out what that looks like. And I don't know that there will be an exact formula per se, because it will be different for different families, different family needs, different, again, industries, et cetera. So
it is. And what's very different compared to 100 years ago, when we were going through the rapid changes in the labor force, the turn of the last century and in those early years, unions played a larger role, and it did try to be more one size fit all from state regulation and federal regulation. And now we're seeing it is very much more up to the employers. Like we've rolled back so many of the labor institutions, and not just unions, but a lot of the policies that shifted that. And so now it really is a negotiation between, more often, employers and individual employees, because they don't even have to blanket, make policies for everyone. So it's a changing, navigating world. As a boss, you're at the helm of it. And as at a women's business center, we're here to try to work with small businesses to help them navigate, what does our company culture look like? How are we going to prioritize this? How are we going to engage both our workforce and our clients and our community in a way that's sustainable for everyone?
What is important to us for culture? What's important to us in terms of getting the work done that we have in front of us? Those are in some ways competing questions, right? And so it's going to be a different answer for each business, I think. And you look at a business like ours, for example, where you need to be collaborative and creative, et cetera. But how can you create some flexibility, right? So we've tackled that a few different ways, right? We said, hey, what if we did an every other Friday on call, right? And we'll do our best to take it off, but we might be needed for something, right? We're too small of a business to be, hey, we're all off or whatnot. But maybe we can pull off something like that. We've been experimenting with that. That's been, gosh, I wouldn't say experimenting anymore. We've been doing it for a few years now. So that's been relatively successful, right? Yeah. And so we're able to offer something for a small company that's relatively unique. Nobody's seen that here in the office on that every other Friday. And so then we said, okay, with COVID, we all went remote. We said, okay, we need to come back together and start working together again. But what if we had so many work from home days per month that each person could be flexible with? And so we're experimenting with that. And that's been working really well. Ever since COVID, we've had that in place. And so I think as companies experiment with what works for them, right? How can they create the flexibility needed for their team and what their team is looking for, but also do it in a way that works for the business?
Absolutely.
Right? And I think there is some testing needed there, I think, for businesses.
But I think you hit the nail on the head by saying you're sharing more with your P&L, with your employees. You share more of the why behind some business decisions. And then it is more of a collaborative environment where you can work towards those shared goals. I'm not trying to wring you out. You're not trying to stick it to the man, and at the end of the day, we get the work done to the quality, standards that we set for ourselves. Clients happy, we're happy, everybody wins.
There is a way to create this, because I think often it's an us versus them mentality, right? It's employers versus the employees, and it's where unions and things that companies, we have to fight for that. And I think if we can figure out that balance there, I think I'm using it right this time. I think we could find a balance here of how do you approach, be transparent enough to say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. How do we get it done? What's important for our culture? What's important for the people who work for us from both a family perspective and a work perspective? But also, how do we get our work done to create an economic situation where we can pay you competitively and things like that? So I'm interested to see how that evolves in the workplace here. And I think that's what you're getting at is this is evolving.
It is evolving.
And we're seeing the data that says it has to evolve.
It has to.
Especially if we want to embrace the growing workforce where we are seeing more women in the workforce with more of this flexibility need. And so I think it's identifying, okay, what has historically worked? What will work for our business? And what can we start playing with? And I would encourage business owners to experiment. Be willing to experiment. There is a fear that if you start offering something that you don't know if it'll work, can I roll it back? And I would say just be transparent with the team.
We'll do everything on trial basis, roll things out in a trial basis. And we're becoming, all of the things that we're talking about really apply because we are more of a knowledge and a professional service-based economy. And when you think about industries that are legacy, manufacturing and labor, automation is driving their change and whether they want to or not, those changes are coming. And so for more knowledge service, professional type businesses and industries, the flip side of that is happening. It's going to be forced upon you sooner rather than later. So try things out on a trial basis, see what works for your business, engage an employee work group or something to come up with some of those ideas, to keep them there. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, people don't just want to sit at home and be given, resources and not expect to do anything. We want to do things. We want to feel productive. We want to feel a part of a team. So ideally, there can be a work-life partnership where we can feel like the work that I'm giving you is bringing me as much joy as the paycheck, and that I'm enjoying coming to work.
You're just going to keep throwing me curveballs with different things. Work-life partnership now.
Yeah.
Okay,
we'll
equilibrium. I can't use balance. Partnership. I mean,
all over the place. But it's changing, and that's if we end on one note, it's just that it's changing, and
Agreed.
I think that the business environment is changing very rapidly. So how you're incorporating technology, how you are engaging your employees, how you are planning the future of your business, you've got to be flexible, and we've got to be willing to change because the legacy, the way business has operated for the last 100 years is pretty much out the window.
I agree. And I think not being afraid to experiment. Be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to experiment, try things, do things on trial basis. But I think change is coming. We're going to have to adapt how we interact with teams, how we interact with those we employ, those we're employed by. So I appreciate your perspective on all of this. And I think
a lot more philosophical than I thought it would, Josh.
Yes. But it was fun. It was fun. And I do think that, again, a big takeaway for me is continue to look at how, what the workforce is needing, but also kind of balance that with what are we trying to do with the business? What do we want to do in our culture, and see what we can do with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Of course.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Industry Insights. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, comment, or even drop us a line over at rockpapersimple.com.